Saudia Flight 163, the tragedy that should have never happened. On the evening of August 19, 1980, Saudia Flight 163, a routine passenger flight, turned into one of the deadliest aviation disasters in history. Departing from Karachi, Pakistan, the Lockheed L-1011 TriStar was bound for Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, with a scheduled stop in Riyadh. The aircraft successfully landed in Riyadh for refueling, but just minutes after taking off again, the unthinkable happened. A fire broke out on board. Despite managing to make an emergency landing back at Riyadh, the flight crew failed to evacuate the aircraft. What should have been a story of survival instead became a heartbreaking catastrophe. All 301 passengers and crew perished due to smoke inhalation before a single door was opened. At the time, this was the second deadliest aviation disaster involving a single aircraft, surpassed only by Turkish Airlines Flight 981. To this day, it remains the deadliest air accident in Saudi Arabia and the most tragic incident involving a Lockheed L-1011 TriStar. The aircraft, Lockheed L-1011 TriStar. The doomed plane was a Lockheed L-1011-200 TriStar, registered as HZHK, delivered to Saudia Airlines just a year prior. With only 3,023 flight hours, it was still a relatively new aircraft. It was powered by 3 Rolls-Royce RB211 engines, each averaging about 4,000 flight hours. The TriStar was considered one of the most technologically advanced aircraft of its time, but no amount of engineering could prevent what was about to unfold. Who was on board? The flight carried 287 passengers and 14 crew members, a total of 301 souls. Among them were pilgrims traveling to Mecca, diplomats, and citizens from at least 20 different countries. The flight crew included Captain Mohammed Kawaider, 38, Saudi Arabia, a pilot with 7,674 flight hours, though noted as a slow learner with past training struggles. First Officer Sami Hassanain, 26, Saudi Arabia, a recently trained pilot with 1,615 flight hours, known for struggles in flight school. Flight Engineer Bradley Curtis, 42, Polish-American, a former DC-3 captain who had 650 flight hours in the TriStar but had struggled with pilot qualifications. This was not an inexperienced crew, but it was a team that would face severe challenges in crisis management. The fire that sealed their fate. At 9:08 p.m. local time, Flight 163 departed Riyadh, resuming its journey to Jeddah. But just 7 minutes into the flight, an ominous warning flashed in the cockpit. Smoke detected in the cargo compartment. The crew delayed their response, spending the next 4 minutes attempting to confirm the warning. It wasn't until 21:20 that the captain decided to return to Riyadh. By this time, the fire had already spread. As the aircraft turned back, the fire grew more aggressive. At 21:25, it burned through control cables, jamming the throttle on the number 2 engine. The crew shut it down, but by 21:35, Captain Kawaider declared an emergency. At 21:36, Flight 163 landed back at Riyadh, a landing that should have saved everyone on board. But then, something incomprehensible happened. A delay that cost 301 lives. Instead of stopping immediately, the captain taxied the aircraft down the entire length of the 13,000-foot runway before finally coming to a stop at 21:39, 3 full minutes after touchdown. But the crew did not evacuate. Ground crews waited anxiously, expecting the doors to open, but the engines were still running, making an external rescue impossible. For 3 agonizing minutes, no one exited the aircraft. At 21:42, radio contact was lost. By the time emergency personnel finally forced open a door at 22:05, the cabin erupted in flames, and everyone inside was already dead. Why did no one escape? Investigators were left with one haunting question. Why didn't anyone evacuate when the aircraft was still intact? The cockpit crew was found still strapped into their seats, and all passengers were found in the forward half of the fuselage. None had been burned. Every single victim had died from smoke inhalation. There are several possible explanations. The crew may have been incapacitated by smoke during landing. The pressurization system was still active, preventing doors from opening. The crew may have delayed evacuation for unknown reasons. While the exact cause remains a mystery, this disaster became a textbook case for aviation training. The investigation: a fire with no clear cause. The official investigation determined that the fire had started in the C-3 cargo compartment, but the exact source was never identified. Among the wreckage, investigators found 2 butane stoves and a discharged fire extinguisher, leading to speculation that a passenger may have been using a stove on board. However, no conclusive evidence supported this theory. Lessons from the disaster. This tragedy led to significant policy changes in aviation safety. Emergency training reforms: Saudia revised its training procedures to prevent similar mistakes. Aircraft design changes: Lockheed improved fire insulation and structural reinforcements. Better fire extinguishers: traditional extinguishers were replaced with more effective halomethane extinguishers. Crew resource management, CRM. The crash highlighted the need for better communication among flight crews, preventing hesitation during emergencies. The power distance problem. The accident also revealed a cultural issue in the cockpit: power distance. In many cultures, subordinates hesitate to question authority figures. The investigation suggested that the first officer and flight engineer may have been too afraid to challenge the captain's decisions, even as the situation became more dire. This reinforced the global importance of CRM training, ensuring that all crew members feel empowered to act in life-threatening situations. In popular culture, the Saudia Flight 163 disaster remains one of the most infamous aviation tragedies ever recorded. In 1982, the British documentary series World in Action aired an episode called The Mystery of Flight 163, exploring the accident and its aftermath. In 2024, the Canadian documentary series Mayday featured this tragedy in an episode titled Under Fire, a tragedy that could have been prevented. Saudia Flight 163 was not doomed from the start. The aircraft was fully functional, the fire was not immediately fatal, and the emergency landing was executed successfully. But hesitation, poor decision-making, and delays cost 301 lives. Had the crew ordered an immediate evacuation, most, if not all, passengers would have survived. Instead, a combination of miscommunication, delayed response, and panic turned a survivable emergency into a historic disaster. Today, the lessons learned from Flight 163 continue to shape aviation safety, reminding us that every second counts in an emergency. Thanks for watching.